Hey, I'm Nathan Cole. Most Ragebait ends with angry comments or a public apology, but these cases never got that chance. From a man who faked drowning so many times, to a man who mocked warning signs, crossed abandoned rooftops for views, and took one step he couldn't take back. It was June 18, 2022, at a reservoir in eastern Ohio. The air was clear and near 80 degrees, but cold water from the dam kept the lake chilly below the surface. Kayakers and fishermen were scattered across the area. Among the weekend swimmers was Dylan Ray Van Trees, 27, a forklift operator at a beverage warehouse. Every Friday after work, he loaded his kayak into the truck and spent his weekends filming lakes, rivers, and hiking trails around eastern Ohio. The videos rarely reach beyond a small circle of outdoor enthusiasts, but according to his friends, Dylan believed one successful partnership could turn the hobby into something much bigger. A small outdoor gear company had recently turned down his sponsorship application, saying they only worked with creators whose videos consistently generated high engagement. Dylan became convinced that one truly viral stunt would finally put him on their radar. Looking back, that's where the goal quietly changed. Over the next 10 months, he staged fake drownings at 6 different lakes, wearing a thin, inflatable belt under his shirt. Rangers warned him twice that repeated false alarms would make people stop believing him. For his next live stream, he wanted something bigger. He chose a lake where swimmers could go far from shore. Signs warned that the water stayed cold below the surface and dropped off quickly past the buoys. Viewers had started spotting the outline of the belt under his shirt, calling the stunts fake. Worried it would ruin his chances of attracting sponsors, he left it in his truck. He clipped an action camera to a foam mount so it floated at chest height and showed his whole body. He told no one he was filming. The lifeguard chair was empty that morning. He swam out past the buoys, farther than any of his earlier stunts, and started the stream with 140 people watching. 2 kayakers 50 yards off recognized him from his previous fake drowning videos. A paddleboarder started toward him, then stopped after one of the kayakers said it was probably another stunt. Nobody on the water moved. He shouted for help and slapped the water, the same as always. The chat filled with laughing faces. What frustrates me about this case is how completely he had conditioned everyone around him. 4 minutes in, his legs felt heavy from the cold, and his shoulders burned. Each time the wind pushed the camera away, he swam after it instead of heading back to shore. At 6 minutes, his right calf cramped and locked. He rolled onto his back twice but couldn't stay afloat. His head dipped under, then came back up. He coughed, swallowed water, and struggled to breathe. Soon, only his fingers broke the surface. Real drowning is usually much quieter than people expect. By then, Dylan no longer had the strength to keep signaling for help. He went under for the last time nearly 8 minutes into the stream. Bubbles rose to the surface for a few seconds before the camera drifted away, pointed at empty water. People on shore assumed it was another stunt or that someone else had already called for help. That's the bystander effect. A fisherman eventually noticed the camera drifting without a swimmer nearby and called 911. Rescue crews found Dylan in 18 feet of water, about 8 yards from the floating camera. Investigators concluded that Dylan drowned after exhausting himself in the cold water. There were no injuries, alcohol, or drugs involved. There wasn't one catastrophic mistake here. It was a series of ordinary decisions that slowly removed every chance he had to recover. The county rescue group now includes Dylan's case in water safety presentations about false distress calls and the bystander effect. Several local creators quietly abandoned staged rescue videos after hearing about the investigation. His live stream was never uploaded again. It remained only as evidence showing how easily repeated deception can erase genuine cries for help. Our next case happened under fluorescent lights at a customer service counter. 3 stores had already banned him. The 4th would be his last. It was March 9, 2021, at an electronics store in North Carolina. The lunch rush filled the parking lot as employees worked the customer service and returns counters. Among the customers that afternoon was Gavin Cole Radbourne, 31, a freelance graphic designer who worked from his apartment. His income changed from month to month, and he often picked up small logo jobs just to cover rent. His friends said Gavin genuinely believed he was exposing companies with unfair return policies. The videos began as easy content, but over time, He started seeing himself less as a prank creator and more as a consumer advocate. The idea came after a camping trip ended with an argument at a customer service desk that someone else happened to record. Gavin wasn't expecting the return to become content. Gavin bought a portable espresso machine, used it during a weekend camping trip, cleaned it thoroughly, then filmed himself returning it on Monday while arguing that it had never worked properly. The cashier refused. The exchange lasted 6 minutes. Someone in line uploaded their own recording before Gavin even reached home. I think this is where the internet quietly rewards the wrong lesson. The product wasn't interesting. The argument was. Within days, larger reaction pages reposted the confrontation. Thousands argued over a return that had nothing to do with them. Gavin realized people weren't watching because of the product. They were choosing sides. He turned it into an entire series. Every episode followed the same formula. Gavin bought expensive products, used them just enough to leave obvious wear, then returned them while secretly recording the employee's reaction. Coffee machines with stained reservoirs, camping lanterns covered in dirt, gaming headsets with worn ear cushions, hiking boots carrying fresh mud in the tread. 3 different stores eventually issued trespass notices after recognizing him from earlier confrontations. Every ban convinced Gavin that he was making large retailers uncomfortable. To him, getting thrown out no longer felt like losing. It felt like winning the argument. For his next upload, he bought a premium electric scooter worth nearly $1,000. He spent the weekend riding it, then tried returning it on Monday, claiming the battery had failed. The service associate immediately noticed the worn tires and scratches along the deck. The store manager checked the scooter's diagnostic menu, which recorded its operating time and mileage. It showed hours of normal use. The return was refused, exactly the confrontation Gavin had been hoping for. He lifted his phone higher, followed the manager toward the front doors, and loudly accused the store of cheating customers. Security asked him to leave several times. He kept backing toward the parking lot, holding the phone so both his face and the employees remained in frame. One thing I've noticed about filming yourself is how quickly the camera becomes the only thing you're looking. Outside the entrance, Gavin continued walking backward while speaking directly into the lens. Behind him, a box truck delivering appliances had turned into the loading lane that crossed in front of the store entrance. The driver slowed for pedestrians, but Gavin never looked away from the screen. His heel caught the edge of the curb. He stumbled backward into the truck's path. The driver braked immediately and sounded the horn, but there wasn't enough distance left. The truck struck Gavin at low speed, throwing him backward onto the asphalt. The back of his head hit the pavement first. His phone slid several yards away, still recording. He was transported to the trauma center. Doctors found that the fall had fractured the base of Gavin's skull and caused severe bleeding around his brain. Emergency surgery relieved some of the pressure, but the swelling continued, and he died shortly after 3 the following morning. Security footage, the truck's onboard camera, and Gavin's own recording all showed the driver had been below the speed limit and had braked as soon as Gavin stepped into the lane. No criminal charges were filed. Investigators concluded Gavin had walked backward into the truck's path while filming himself. Following the investigation, several regional retailers updated employee guidance for handling customers who intentionally recorded confrontations. Gavin's family asked that his accounts be removed, and investigators retained the recordings as part of the case file. The strange part is that Gavin spent months trying to prove stores should always take responsibility. In the end, investigators concluded the one person responsible for this accident was Gavin himself. Before we get into the remaining cases, take a second to leave a like. It really helps support the channel, and I appreciate every one of you who's here watching. Now back to the cases. In the next one, nobody ignored the emergency. He had promised his viewers he wouldn't answer anyone. It was November 4th, 2020, in downtown Wichita, Kansas. Shops filled the ground floor. 91 people lived upstairs, 40 degrees and dry with a north wind. A contractor van had been parked in the alley since morning. Among the fourth-floor tenants was Kieran Miles Vorhauer, 29. Every night he unloaded freight at a warehouse, and every weekend he tried to convince himself he could eventually leave that job behind. Live streaming had become less of a hobby and more of an exit plan. The idea arrived by accident during a shopping trip. While waiting for a friend, Kieran sat in a mall fountain wearing noise-canceling headphones and ignored a security guard asking him to leave. Another shopper uploaded the exchange before he did. The clip spread far beyond his own audience, earning enough advertising revenue to cover nearly a month's month's rent. For the first time, quitting warehouse work no longer felt impossible. From that point on, Kieran stopped chasing funny ideas and started repeating the only format that had ever paid his bills. That's how the Ignore Everyone Challenge was born. Big, noise-canceling headphones, zero eye contact, and absolute silence, no matter who spoke. Over 8 months, he filmed it in transit stations, restaurants, and office lobbies, and collected 4 trespass notices. When critics said someone would get hurt, he answered that real emergencies are obvious, and that confidence would end up becoming one of the biggest problems in this entire case. That night, he streamed from his apartment to prove he'd ignore every interruption, even if it came from neighbors, maintenance, police, or firefighters. 2 things made his apartment different from a mall. A notice by the mailboxes said contractors were working on the electrical service in the ground floor utility room that day. The smoke detector inside his apartment had chirped through a stream in September, so he pulled its battery and never replaced it. In October, management emailed residents about a false alarm from burnt food, which he used on stream as proof that alarms mean nothing. The first hour was laundry, leftovers, and dares from the chat. Imagine getting so used to performing for strangers that you stop noticing the difference between your audience and the people trying to save your life. Around 11, a contractor accidentally cut into a live electrical line, starting a fire inside the utility room wall. Smoke spread through the building, the fire alarm sounded, and everyone was told to evacuate using the stairs. Emergency crews were called as the fire began to grow. 3 neighbors pounded on his door, shouting that it wasn't a drill. His footage shows him glance at the door, grin at the camera, and go back to the chat. That decision mattered more than it looked. Apartment crews can't spend minutes at every closed door when smoke is spreading through an entire building. Firefighters reached the 4th floor, pounded on the door, and announced themselves twice. Body camera audio caught no response. With another resident reported trapped on the floor above, they were forced to prioritize the more immediate rescue. Smoke came under the door in a flat gray line. The kitchen camera shows it stacking down from the ceiling. He waved a dish towel at it and laughed. Within minutes, the ceiling was out of sight. He coughed, pulled off the headphones, and ended the stream. He opened the door, and black smoke rolled in above his head. The heat pushed him back, and he could not see the exit sign 12 feet away. 12 feet sounds impossible to miss until smoke turns 12 feet into complete darkness. He shut the door, gagging between coughs, and crawled toward the bedroom window. The hallway camera shows a shelf come off the wall onto his back. His breathing went to a dry wheeze, then to nothing. Crews knocked the fire down, and a search team found him face down in the kitchen doorway and carried him to the alley, where medics worked 20 minutes before a doctor pronounced him dead. Doctors later found thick soot deep inside Kieran's lungs, showing he was still breathing while the apartment filled with smoke. Carbon monoxide in his blood had climbed to a level the body simply couldn't survive. Aside from bruises caused by the falling shelf, investigators found no significant traumatic injuries. The challenge had always been about pretending other people didn't exist. That night, the only voices Kieran refused to hear were the ones trying to get him out alive. Management now requires contractors to report electrical damage the moment it happens, and evacuation instructions are posted on every floor. Regional fire departments use the stream and the body camera audio in public classes, telling people to treat every alarm as real. His family asked that his accounts be closed. Investigators kept the footage in the case file, and several creators quietly dropped the format. Trade the smoke and the deadbolt for frost on a Colorado meadow. And the next case comes down to a bull elk that ran through every warning it had before it lowered its head. It was September 24th, 2023, at a national park in Colorado. It was a cold, quiet morning as photographers watched a herd feed across the meadow. Parked at the far end was Rhett Owen Calverley, 30, a landscaping contractor from Loveland who ran crews on weekdays and spent most weekends hiking before sunrise with a camera in his backpack. People knew him because he rarely went outdoors without stopping to photograph wildlife or the changing light across the mountains. His channel was small, but it was the hobby he cared about most. For almost 2 years, his channel looked exactly the way you'd expect: trail guides, sunrise time lapses, and quiet encounters with wildlife. Then one afternoon, he clapped and lunged toward a mule deer as a joke while ending a recording. The startled animal ran across a campground road, and someone nearby uploaded their own angle before Rhett even got home. Wildlife pages reposted both videos. Thousands criticized him, but the attention spread farther than anything he'd ever filmed. Looking back, that's the moment this case really changed. People weren't sharing his photography anymore. They were sharing his worst decision. That spring, Rhett lost 2 commercial landscaping contracts, leaving him searching for extra income wherever he could find it. Scenic hiking videos barely covered fuel, but every controversy surrounding wildlife seemed to bring another surge of attention. Before long, he stopped asking whether an idea respected the animals and started asking whether people would argue about it. On his stream that morning, he told viewers he would prove the park distances were padded and that bulls only bluff. He filmed alone. Late September is the peak of the rut. Bulls are running on almost no food, herding cows and fighting other bulls. A sign at the turnout said to stay 25 yards back and warned that bulls charge during breeding season. He read part of it aloud on stream and laughed. Those warning signs can feel excessive until you realize almost every one of them exists because someone ignored the last version. He found a mature bull feeding 40 feet off the turnout, 6x6 antlers, neck swollen. He set the tripod at about 30 feet and started the stream with 260 watching. Between camera adjustments, he stepped in closer twice until tourist video put him inside 15 feet. He talked loudly at the animal, then held up a speaker and played a recorded bugle 3 times. The bull's head came up. 2 photographers packed their gear and moved behind their cars. A man near the fence yelled that he was way too close. The elk turned to face him, ears flat back, head lowered, and thrashed its antlers through the brush. It bugled, and a string of drool hung off its mouth. Rhett turned to the camera, spread his arms, and said it was only trying to scare him. The charge covered 15 feet in about a second. He turned and ran for the pullout, but the gap between a parked SUV and a concrete barrier was narrow, and his boots slid out on the loose gravel. The bull hit him while he was down on one knee. Tourist footage shows the antlers go into his back and side and lift him off the ground twice. The animal drove its head down on him 4 or 5 more times and then stood on his chest, pushing its full weight through its front hooves. A ranger, already responding to an earlier complaint, arrived during the attack. He laid on the horn, shouted, and eased the truck between the elk and Rhett until the bull backed off into the meadow. A visitor called 911 as 2 off-duty nurses held pressure on the wounds and kept Rhett's airway clear. He was breathing in short gasps, pale and unresponsive. Park medics rushed him to a waiting helicopter, but he stopped breathing on the way to the trauma center and was later pronounced dead. Doctors treating Rhett quickly realized the attack had caused far more damage than could be seen from the outside. The elk had fractured 9 ribs, collapsed both lungs, and driven an antler deep into his liver, causing massive internal bleeding. Investigators found nothing else that contributed to his death. The park expanded ranger talks at the busiest wildlife pullouts, added larger rut season warning signs, and began using the incident during seasonal staff training to explain the warning behaviors bulls usually display before charging. That's the saddest part. Rhett started filming wildlife because he admired it. Somewhere along the way, getting a reaction became more important than respecting it. Our last story had no animal to misread, only a 4x6 panel of gray fiberglass on an old Louisville roof that looked exactly like the tar patches he had been walking on all evening. It was October 7th, 2022, in an old warehouse district in Louisville, Kentucky. Sunset was approaching as rows of aging brick buildings stood separated by narrow service alleys. Waiting for that sunset was Tobin Wade Hallstry, 28, a parcel delivery driver who spent most evenings photographing parts of Louisville most people never noticed. Empty warehouses, rusting water towers, rooftops above streets he'd driven through hundreds of times. He dreamed of turning those forgotten places into documentary films someday, even if only a handful of people were watching. Everything shifted after he climbed the fire escape of a closed tobacco warehouse to film one sunset from the roof. 2 large urban exploration pages reposted the clip. Most people criticized him for trespassing, but the attention caught the eye of a regional adventure channel. They told him they would consider collaborating if he could keep producing videos with the same level of engagement. That's when everything changed. Tobin stopped chasing good views and started chasing bigger reactions. Every climb pushed him a little further. Police cited him in March. Roofers filled his comments with warnings about old skylights that give way, and he answered that maintenance men walk those roofs every day. There's a huge difference, though. Roofers usually know exactly where it's safe to step. Someone seeing the roof for the first time doesn't. That evening, Tobin planned to live stream himself crossing 5 rooftops without ever touching the street. At first glance, it almost looks manageable. Standing on one roof, the next building feels close enough to reach in a few careful steps. The buildings sat so close together that the alleys between them were only about 8 feet wide at the parapets. On paper, it looked less like a dangerous stunt and more like a series of careful steps. The last building in the row was the oldest, a 1921 bag plant that had stood empty for 9 years. A contractor notice on the ground floor door said roof work was scheduled and access was closed. 2 signs on the roof repeated the same warning. He started at 7:10, with the evening light already fading into a flat gray. He crossed the first 4 roofs in 22 minutes with 340 people watching. He filmed himself over 2 locked gates, read 1 sign aloud, and spent most of the walk looking at comments on his phone instead of the surface ahead of him. A neighboring building's camera shows him step over the last parapet at 7:41. The bag plant roof was tar and gravel, patched in dark squares. 20 feet in sat a fiberglass skylight, 4 feet by 6, in a curb only 2 inches high. Decades of weather had turned the panel gray and opaque, and dirt and dead leaves lay across it. And this is exactly why old skylights keep showing up in accident reports. After enough years, they stopped looking like skylights at all. In that light, it looked like another patch. His footage shows him take a normal walking step onto the panel. It broke under his front foot with one dry crack. He went straight down with no time to grab the curb, pieces of fiberglass falling with him. He hit the bare concrete floor 34 feet below on his back and left hip. The camera landed beside him and kept recording. It caught the impact, then a wet, gurgling breath every few seconds, and nothing else from him. 3 contractors doing layout work near the loading bay heard the crash and found him under the hole. One called 911 at 7:44. He was unconscious and breathing, bleeding from the left ear and nose. His left leg turned outward at the hip, a bone end pushing up under the skin of his forearm. They did not move him. The first engine arrived at 7:50, medics reached him at 7:52, and he left on a backboard at 8:03. He was pronounced dead at the downtown trauma center at 8:39. The 34-foot fall left almost every major part of Tobin's body badly damaged. His brain had suffered severe trauma. His spine was broken in 3 places, his pelvis was shattered, and broken ribs had torn both lungs and his spleen. Doctors later said the combination of catastrophic head injuries and internal bleeding gave him virtually no chance of survival. Owners along the row added locked roof hatches, replaced faded warning signs, and bolted metal cages over the accessible skylights on the 2 buildings under renovation. The city building safety office and the police now use the case in outreach about old commercial roofs. Unfortunately, changes like these often happen only after someone has already shown why they were needed. Several rooftop creators publicly abandoned similar challenges after the investigation. Tobin's live stream and the neighboring security footage are still used by Louisville building inspectors when explaining why unprotected skylights remain one of the deadliest hazards on older commercial roofs.